Hello, thank you very much all for coming to attend our webinar this evening, talking about payroll and the ins and outs, the mechanics of payroll, and what to look for on the financial side. I'm Holly Corcoran. I had a traditional practice for many years, and last year decided to start an entirely virtual practice, concentrating on veterinary practices and their owners and helping with business advisory and advanced tax planning. And I've been having a really good time doing that. And of course, we're coming to the end of the year, so there's going to be a lot of taxes that we'll be talking about. So I'm going to open up my slides and we can get going. Not that one. Okay. Slideshow. There we go. Okay. And you know what? I need to share my screen first. You'd think this is my first time doing this. Okay. So as I said just a minute ago, our topic this evening is payroll in veterinary practices. Myself, Holly Corcoran, I'm with Corcoran Business Advisory Service, and our guest this evening is Jacob Maurer from ADP Payroll Processing. I'm going to talk first about the mechanics of looking at your financial numbers in relation to payroll, and then Jacob is going to let you know how his company can take that owner's task off the owner's plate, give you peace of mind, and also to talk about some of the other services that ADP offers that is very complementary to payroll. So let me get started. So anyhow, payroll cost is probably one of the highest costs on your profit and loss every month, and it's typically between 40 and 50% of the operating expenses. So, we break that down with, okay, how much is the doctor's wages, how much is supporting staff, and so forth. What is the appropriate percentage when you're looking at payroll, when you have the cost? Are you paying too much, not enough, or not enough revenue in relation to your staffing? And that varies based upon, where you are in the country, what type of practice you have, if it's small animal or equine, large animal, feline only, mobile, it can all change. And the cost helps to reflect the efficiency, capacity, and sometimes even the culture of your practice. So if you have a lot of turnover because you don't have the best culture, your costs are going to go up, and it's going to blow those expenses out on a analytical basis. And some of the things that that you want to look at when you're thinking about payroll and analyzing payroll is you want to look at your profit and loss statement. You want to look at your practice management software. And in the back of your mind, you want to keep an idea out for your ownership and exit strategy. And I always say to the vets that I'm working with in an advisory capacity is to say, hey, I want you to pencil in your retirement date somewhere down the line so that you have a target and you're not caught off guard at the end when you realize, oh, gee, I want to start retiring. What does that look like, and how do you be prepared for that? And some of that is relation to the payroll and what you're paying yourself and your staff. So you want to make sure that you're distinguishing direct payroll, such as your doctors, your techs, and your customer service reps, from the administrative and managerial payroll. Some of the typical buckets that payroll goes into on the profit and loss I'll show on the next screen. And some of the mistakes that are commonly seen in payroll is the owner's wages is not in the right spot, so it's misclassified, or we didn't separate out the payroll taxes and the benefits for proper benchmarking. Allowing overtime to hide staffing efficiency. So, your costs are going up. You're paying a lot of overtime, but unfortunately, it could have just been done more efficiently. And I always tell my practice owners to make sure you have an employee manual, and make sure you have standard operating procedures, SOPs, these things that the staff can go back and look at and make sure that they are doing the procedure correctly. And once it becomes routinized, efficiencies increase, and you don't have to stay late at night to try to get the work done that was due during the day. So the other thing is you want to make sure that the health insurance reimbursements, or whether you're working with a health insurance plan. So if you're paying a health insurance plan, those payments are deductible. There's not compensation to the employee. It's deductible to the practice. You might have a certain cutoff of the extent of the benefit that you're going to provide in relation to that plan before an employee has to kick in. But if you're paying for a plan, then that's basically it. You just pay it. It's not compensation to the employee. If you have health insurance reimbursements for your employees where they go out and buy their insurance separately, then that is considered compensation for that employee, and it ends up affecting other numbers. It can affect your percentages of what you're looking at in relation to your revenue, because that health insurance is built in there. It can also, increase your other costs, like your payroll taxes are going to go up because of the employer match portion of it, or your workman's comp may go up because you have a high amount of compensation, whereas that's actually health insurance. So you really want to weigh that when you're looking at your benefits for your employees in relation to health insurance. And on this page, I'm just giving you an idea of what the AVMA chart of accounts looks like. And this is just only the compensation numbers. There's a whole nother section for, the employee taxes, the payroll taxes, and the another section again for the benefits. So really, to break it down, you can have the owner compensation broken down between whether they're working as a veterinarian, what hat are they wearing at any given time, and or whether they're doing management. Or you may have one practice, one member in a large practice that does just the management side of it. So it's breaking down those costs so that you really know who is producing what, and comparing that revenue appropriately, all the way down to when you have your support staff, or if you have a small animal practice that provides grooming, and at the bottom kennel assistants and things like that. So you can really break out those costs and make sure you're comparing apples to apples when you're looking at the revenue in relation to the expense itself. Now, if you have the AVMA chart of accounts, you don't need every single one of these on here. You just need what you pay in your practice, because otherwise it's just a whole lot of fluff and moving around those accounts. So some benchmarking, use your practice management software. It's very valuable. You want to look at whether these hours that you're paying for are tied to actual productivity. You want to look at your revenue per doctor, if you can, revenue per staff hour, if that's possible within the records that you have, or if you may have some, like your techs may actually be earning revenue, generating revenue, like giving shots under supervision, but then it doesn't take a vet to do that. So their costs can be associated to that revenue stream as well. Appointments per day per doctor. And then, of course, we always look at the average cost average client transaction, which is your revenue per invoice, and to see that is pretty ratable against the, through the doctors. In connection to the payroll, if it's too high, is it because of overstaffing or underperformance? Are you paying too much and not getting what you need, or do you just have too many bodies in the spots? And the practice management software is going to help you really identify whether it's a problem of, staffing, or whether it's operational where you're losing efficiency. So this is really a good way to highlight kind of areas that you can improve on in your practice, or find the strengths that you have within your practice. All right. So you want to optimize the support staff ratios. You want to look at your doctor per technician. If you're a equine vet on the road, a tech will probably travel with you. They're not necessarily doing all medical work. They're sometimes holding the horses because, the clients are not necessarily able to handle their animals in that tense situation, and that tech is there to keep the veterinarians safe. So it's going to be different for them versus a small animal practice, a general practice, any type of specific, like feline only or emergency. So these ratios are going to be different based upon what type of work you're doing. And it can also help influence, your wait times. If we can get our efficiency down, then people wait less in the waiting room, and a lot of people are happier that way, and I'm sure the animals are as well. It influences the doctor capacity and reflects your overall efficiency. So two examples here are if a clinic has low payroll percentage, but has really poor ratios in relation to the practice management software, it could actually be understaffed, which is kind of, you wonder, does that make sense? But it could be an area that needs to be looked at. And then another is if the clinic has high payroll, really good output, and good ratios, it just may need a pricing adjustment, not necessarily, overstaffing or understaffing. So you want to use those ratios in the practice management software in conjunction with your profit and loss, because it helps build the story. I don't say necessarily to look at one without the other, because they're both very valuable. And then we want to look at the owner's compensation. This can come in on different levels. We have a necessary tax return at the end of the year and filings with the IRS, so we want to make sure that we're in compliance. And then we also, at some point in time, maybe want to sell our practice. The IRS actually has reasonable compensation standards that they require, especially for an S corporation, that the owner is taking out an appropriate level of compensation so that they're not taking a low compensation and high distributions, which ends up avoiding the FICA taxes. So they have certain parameters that they're looking at, especially if the business goes under audit. Those questions will be asked. It also helps if the owner is compensated similar to the doctors when they practice, that you're looking at the correct key performance indicators, the right KPIs. You want to make sure you can compare doctor to doctor. Does it make sense? And it also helps protect the owner from an IRS audit or even a workman's comp audit and so forth. And later on, the practice valuation. So how do you set that doctor's salary so that it's correct? I mean, it's going to be different in different areas of the country. Like New York City is going to certainly be different than, rural Kansas or something like that. So that's going to be one factor. But you want to look at your production, your hours, and the rates that are in the market. What are you paying your other veterinarians, or what are they charging for? And what is your production? I also like to look at an administration compensation. Sometimes it's 1% to 2% of overall gross revenues for the person that's handling the management side, because you're losing time, being in the office versus being in the examination room. So that should be compensated. And even on the chart of accounts that we looked at above, they break down the management aspect versus when you're operating as a veterinarian. And then certain things you want to avoid is, what I said before, is underpaying that payroll so that you don't have to pay the FICA taxes, but you also lose out on the 401k or retirement contributions because you miss that employer match. And if you have a good 401k plan that offers the opportunity to do profit sharing contributions, which can actually be determined at the end of the year or after the end of the year, you might be able to contribute a certain percentage across payroll, and there's certain testing that takes place to make sure that people are qualified and so forth. But that percentage is going to be across the employee's payroll. It's going to be across your payroll as well. So if you're underpaying yourself, you're going to short yourself in that available contribution for retirement. Overinflating the practice value through increasing the compensation is not worth it, because when you actually come to a sale, the owners are going to normalize that salary one way or another. They're going to look at and say they want to know, what is it going to cost me to replace you, the practice owner, a salary to get someone in there to do that job, or it could be a veterinarian who's coming into that position, and am I going to be able to make enough to make ends meet and keep the practice running? So that's going to be scrutinized in the sale process. Some of the things that buyers look at are, is the owner operating, working as two doctors? Sometimes it's a matter of efficiency, capacity. A lot of times as you increase over time in your profession, you become so good at what you're doing that it's, second thought. It takes no time to do it because you've been doing it for forever, or you have really good efficiencies that are built in. But also the other side of it is that management hat. Are you wearing that, and how much time is that pulling away from being in the exam room? So they want to be able to sure they can wrap their heads around that. If you have too much administrative payroll or you're paying family members, that can also be a distortion. And if you're understaffed or overstaffed, that's going to be a consideration they're going to be looking at in the purchase process. So for, some suggestions for owners that are thinking about selling, I always say, think about this 3 to 5 years in advance of when you're going to retire. And that's why I say, put it on the calendar for, 2000 whatever is when you're going to retire, and then start really nailing it down 3 to 5 years in advance to make sure that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And you want to make sure you clean up the payroll now would be great, but at least in advance of that valuation process, you want to normalize the owner's wages and make sure that your staffing levels are appropriate for the revenue that you're shooting for, because the idea of owning a business is that you can get a better return at the end of the day by owning that business because you're taking the risk of owning the business. So it makes sense to look at growth and whether you can manage that growth and what staffing you need to complement that. And then you want to make sure you document your roles, your hours, job descriptions, and so forth. Again, I tell everybody to have an employee handbook, an employee manual, SOP, standard operating procedures, so that the staff knows what they need to do to be able to do their job. And also, what type of benefits are you offering? Because you want to know, the staff wants to know, make sure that everybody's on the same page and treated equitably across the page. So basically, this is the overview. As we bring it all together, we want to use our financial statements, our practice management software, and we want to keep in mind, some transition down the line on what that's going to look like and how that compensation is going to be affected by that. And some of the questions that you want to ask as a practice owner is, are we staffed appropriately? Is my compensation reasonable and aligned with the market? Do payroll numbers support a future sale, or is it hindering it? And are we optimizing payroll for tax and retirement contribution purposes? And remember, if you're an S corporation, that's something that the IRS is definitely going to look at. Oddly enough, for a C corporation, they don't really care, but that's because you can't take the money out without that FICA impact or double taxation on dividends. So ask me about that as on another topic. But anyhow, make sure those questions are being asked and that you're getting the appropriate answers to put your payroll costs where they need to be, at the levels they need to be, and with the efficiencies that you need to run your practice. And finally, that's the portion of my presentation. And I wanted to say a big thank you to everyone that's coming out. I really appreciate it. An announcement is I'm going to be at AAEP in Denver in December, booth number 2653. Come visit me and you'll get a free copy of my book, which is shown here, The Vet Advisor. We'll be sending out the recording of this webinar along with the slides to you and everyone else who signed up for the webinar. And if you get it, then you can, click on the image and it would take you to where it's for sale on Amazon. Or I do have an abridged version that is free on my website. If you'd like to set up a time to meet and see if it's, your practice something I can help with, just feel free to use the link and we can have a quick conversation. I also wanted to give a forecast for our next webinar, which is December 17th at 7 p.m. And you want to look at saving significantly on your income taxes. It's a twofold process. We need to look at the business side to make sure that the efficiencies are there and that the income is flowing appropriately. But then we want to look at how are we saving taxes in that process. And there's some really good strategies out there that can help practice owners and high earner veterinarians really keep their taxes lower. So thank you very much for coming. And I want to turn it over to Jacob, and he will introduce himself and give a little bit of introduction to who he is and take off on his conversation with you.
Thanks so much, Holly. Well, I appreciate everyone for giving me the time here today to kind of talk about payroll. Obviously, Holly went through in depth on how payroll is going to be the biggest item on your P&L and how it's going to affect everything from sale to there's just massive trickle down effects that payroll can have. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the compliance and how we can make payroll easy for you so you can spend more time focusing on value added activity that is going to help to increase that evaluation of your practice should the day come when you are looking to sell. So let me go ahead and share my screen quickly, and I can open up this. So this is just a quick little PowerPoint that I put together. Payroll made painless, simplifying payroll for veterinary practices. Quick agenda. We're just going to talk about some challenges that are unique to veterinary practices, some compliance updates and risk areas. How can we make payroll efficient and cost effective? Technology that can simplify payroll, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A at the end. So first and foremost, let's understand the vet payroll landscape. Holly did a great job of kind of going through that and looking at the class codes when it comes to, how you're going to classify those wages that are being paid. But obviously you're going to have a mix of hourly, salaried, relief, and contract staff. There can be high turnover, multiple pay rates. The challenges that you're going to see are tracking hours, shift differentials, overtime, paid time off. So I attached a little screenshot here of what that can kind of look like for you. So, you're seeing you have all your employees listed. You have Ernest Davis here. He's in operations and administration, different rates. You can have his hours. Does that go to overtime? Does that, how do those rates change? All this is basically a calculator for you that you just have to worry about entering in the hours, which we can track for you through a timekeeping software. That all you have to do is just go in and be like, oh, okay, yeah, those hours look right. I know they were scheduled from 8 to 5 and everything along those lines. So it just streamlined one easy process. Some common payroll mistakes that we see are misclassifying relief vets as 1099 versus W-2s, missed state and local updates, not tracking all compensable time, and inconsistent PTO tracking. That's another thing here. So I have top things to do. It's obviously process payroll, verify your quarterly tax report, complete your quick hire. All those things, verifying your quarterly tax, that's state and local tax updates. All that is going to be on there. And it's going to be in your top things to do. So you're going to be able to look and say, oh, yeah, I need to update that. I need to acknowledge this, all when you're running payroll on your weekly, bi-weekly basis. Um, Inconsistent PTO tracking. That's what's great about having one overarching software for payroll is that we can integrate your PTO plan. And Holly's talked about a employee handbook. We can integrate that employee handbook, create that PTO plan here in ADP so that it can track all of those hours for you. And I will get into this a little bit later on how easy it is for your employees to go in, request time off, and see, what's left and how it all works. The hot topics in compliance right now are Department of Labor overtime thresholds, multi-state compliance or traveling staff, tax withholding updates, importance of accurate reg keeping, and then lastly, but not least, one big beautiful bill. I am sure that, everyone's heard about this, whether it's on the news, Facebook, the paper, everywhere you go, you're seeing something. What does one big beautiful bill mean for you today here in 2025? As of right now, nothing. 2025 is considered a transition year. So all of the FLSA standards on overtime and tip tracking will not change on the 2025 W-2. It will, however, have changes in 2026. ADP is already on top of having those changes ready for the start of 2026 and having qualified overtime. What is going to be considered qualified overtime is federal overtime regulations, which means more than 40 hours a week. Obviously, I know that there are some state laws and individual businesses who will offer overtime. on maybe it is, if they come in for a weekend, or if there's an emergency and they need to you have to call staff to come in, and they'll pay that at time and a half. What that will not qualify for is the one big beautiful bill tax credit. That would be considered non-qualified overtime. As of today, the only overtime that can be considered is if you are working more than 40 hours in a work week. So that is just something to be on the lookout for moving forward, and why it's so important to, have a resource and outsource your payroll, because that's just something that isn't going to always be in your forte. You got into this business because you have a passion for animals and running a veterinary practice, not a passion for reading compliance updates on payroll. So bringing this into payroll and HR integration, it's a centralized system that is going to reduce all your admin work. And like I've said ad nauseum here, integrated time tracking, scheduling, benefits. It's going to reduce your manual error and save you time overall. And with ADP, it in 2025 was rated best software, #1 rated small business product by the G2 survey. It also is going to have you ready for tax season, which I know is a popular thing as we're approaching the end of the year, especially for those S corps out there and having to go pass through to your personal returns. So W-2s, W-9 reconciliation and best practices, year-end reporting made simple right here. Tell us which tax returns that you want. You started with ADP on July 16th. You can come in, click on Q4, click on Q3, click on the whole year, whatever it is. One batch report of every single quarterly tax, payroll summary, everything that you need. So when your accountant or anyone is calling, or you have an audit or whatever the case may be, all of that information is available in one simple spot at the tip of your fingers to make sure that you can have your valuable time being spent running your practice. Bringing it all back to how technology will make payroll easier, automated pay calculations and tax filing, and then most importantly, employee self-service access here. I took a screenshot of what the mobile app for ADP looks like. So your employees can see their time cards, their pay, what their pay statement's going to be, their schedule, time off, retirement, all that in one place. They can also click on time off up here and request time off. That gets sent right back to the owner, so you can either approve it, whatever the case may be. They can come in, they can change their direct deposit information, they can grab pay stubs. I don't know how many people deal with this, where someone is trying to buy a car or a house and they need proof of income, and they're coming to you and they're saying, hey, can I have my pay stubs from the last 3 weeks? And then you have to go get those pay stubs. Not with an outsourced service. They can go right in, get their screenshot, have their W-2s all in one spot to allow you to focus on what matters most. And then beyond the payroll, there's HR support, compliance guidance, benefits integration. As you can see here, business insurance, you can create a workers' comp certificate, workers' compensation report packages, health and benefits, managing your group health benefits through the ADP insurance agency, the workers' comp policy. So we kind of touched on workers' comp earlier, but what that is it's a payroll-based insurance, right? So you have a portion of your payroll, so we'll call it a percent or whatever the case may be, is paid to cover your workers' comp liability. What that means is at the end of the year, you could face an audit, and you may have said that you were going to hire 5 people and have $500,000 in payroll. All of a sudden, the practice doubles in size and you have 10 people and $1 million in payroll. At the end of the year, when you get audited, you're going to owe the insurance agency that difference. We can integrate that workers' compensation policy so that when you add those employees, there is no difference. And every single time that you run a payroll, it's down to the cent accurate with your policy. So the key takeaways of this are payroll errors can be a compliance risk. Automation is going to save you time and money, and integrated HR and payroll is going to give you some smoother operations and give you more time back in your day. And what I do want to do here, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second and go back to our ADP screen here and just show you how quick and simple this can be. So as we look at our screen here, right, you come in and it's, your next pay date, you click on run payroll. And this screen here is going to look a little familiar because I had a screen grab of it earlier, but you can come in and hey, it looks like you're running payroll a bit earlier. You paying a bonus, commission, extra check. Not today. We're doing a regular payroll. But as you can see, you have your employees here. They're worked in states. So if you have someone who's traveling and they might be in California, Nevada, or wherever the case may be, you can add there. Worked in locals, departments, rates, hours, all of the above. Okay, you did your time tracking. All that looks good. Next, if you are paying N1099s, we can pay that here as well. Then you click on preview payroll and you can see right here, everything is handled for you in one place. As soon as it loads while it thinks.
Yeah, computers have a hard time doing two things at one time.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, basically what would happen here, while it's loading, it's submitting your payroll hours and it's going to spit out, okay, this is what payroll is, and this is what your taxes that you are for your federal, state, local, whatever jurisdictions. All that is taken and paid for you at the click of a button. So, and then handled your quarterlies at the end of the quarter. So there's nothing, and from a compliance standpoint, there's no more at the end of the quarter, someone comes to you and you now have a $4,000 bill because you owe your local tax or your unemployment tax, whatever the case may be. That's all taken care of. We'll just go back. Well, since it's thinking, let's go look at HR. I know that Holly is a big proponent of the employee handbook. Right here, there's an employee handbook integrated. So you can come in, and this is obviously a demo. You can add your logo. There's a lot of general information here that's great to have, and it's going to cover you in case of issues. And then you can also add new policies yourself, and add those standard operating procedures, as well as making sure your PTO policy's there. And then when you're onboarding an employee through ADP, when we go back here, when you go to hire and onboard and you're going to add a new hire, you're going to add a W-2 employee, them reading and acknowledging that employee handbook becomes part of their onboarding process. And what's even better is that if anything is out of date and there are changes, and just talking about one big beautiful bill earlier, there's always compliance changes that happen. We will let you know so you're able to go in, update that handbook, and resend it back out for acknowledgement, always knowing that you're staying compliant. With that being said, I can kind of get off of here and we can go back to the other screen. So the next steps for anyone, schedule a complimentary payroll audit or benchmark review with me. We can have a solution tailored for your veterinary practice. My email and phone number will be right here at the bottom. So feel free to email or text me to get some time scheduled. Would happy to, as year end comes and we're looking at evaluating a lot of these processes, I'd be happy to have a conversation and see if we can either save you some money or time. And then just wanted to open up for any questions, should anybody have any.
I don't have anything in the Q&A, but actually I have a few questions.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
One was with the one big beautiful bill on. I know that they said that this is going to be like there won't be any penalties if for some reason it's not measured correctly. But how will the employee know what their deductible portion is if it's not going to be on the W-2?
So it won't be on the W-2 for 2025. So
Right.
not there's going to be nothing as of 2025 because it's a transition year. I was just reading into this earlier. The language itself is a little vague. Let me pull it up. Um, so 2025 is considered a transition year. No changes to the W-2 in 2025. However, there will be requirements from 20 through 26 through 28. There is no 2025 W-2 required currently. Bill advises to provide qualified tips and or qualified overtime by any reasonable method, which we
Uh,
are still working to get, clarification on what that means.
yeah.
Obviously, that's a little vague at the moment. What is nice is that, with ADP, we and have, a lot of backing and have people who are on Capitol Hill, working on this. So we will be some of the first to know when that does happen.
Right. Yeah, so that's good to know. I didn't realize that there wasn't going to be a change in the W-2, and that I guess the employer could potentially give them a printout that shows their overtime.
Mhm.
And the problem is it's not going to be correct because it's not even the whole number. It's, the portion that relates to the overtime piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's interesting because they're saying that there's opportunity, but it's not, and it's going to make it for an interesting tax season for people when they're trying to figure out like, does this qualify, does it not, and how's that all going to work?
It's a freebie year.
Yeah,
Take what you think is right.
yeah, exactly.
So, also with S corporations, let me just double check, see if we have any questions. Nope, no questions yet. Um, with the S corporations and the greater than 2% owner share, health insurance,
Mhm.
um, how do you handle that
Uh,
with
so
payroll?
so when on an ADP setup, we elect, you just elect like, hey, this is an S corporation. And it's actually baked in that when we're going through our setup process, you select S corporation, and it's going to ask who are the owners where that would qualify, and we're able to just add that in automatically.
Okay, do you do that at the end of the year with the
Yeah,
W-2?
it'll be
Okay,
at the end of the W-2.
okay. And then the employee manual, does that take into consideration federal and state requirements when you're dealing with
Yes.
individual employers?
Yes. So it's going to be catered to the state that the business is headquartered in. Obviously, if there's going to be some multi state compliance, that will be something that we actually have an HR help desk that they can call in for, which is available to our clients from 8:30 to 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if they have questions, no matter what, they can call into this helpline, which is SHRM certified HR professionals. So if you were going to go hire an HR generalist for your practice,
Wow.
the same person you would be hiring and paying $30-$40 an hour, you can call 12 hours a day, which is
Wow.
nice to get those answers, and if they are state specific.
Okay, great. And then another question I had was, I know you guys can do the 1099s at the same time that you're doing payroll for, like the relief vets and so forth. And then obviously you're issuing the 1099s at the end of the year. Do the contractors have an opportunity for direct deposit, or is that the only way you'll pay them, or how does that work?
It could be direct deposit, it could be check. It's really at the practice owner's discretion. The
All
the
right. So,
only time that we have an issue with direct deposit would be if it's only like a 1099 relief vet practice where it's just a lot of 1099s. It would be you could still do direct deposit, but it would be a 4-day ACH hold.
ah,
So if it was going to be on Friday, like everyone get Friday, we would need to know by Monday just to make sure that the funds clear. Whereas
mhm.
if it's normal W-2 or we're pulling and paying taxes, it is the day before.
Okay. All right, good. So you don't necessarily have it with a new employer versus an experience rate as to the date it has to be funded. It can go up to the day before for any practice.
Yep, up to the day before, unless there's unless it gets to a point where we're doing it the day before and then we pull the funds, they aren't there, we have to go back, pull it again. Like if there's repeat offenses, then
Yeah.
yes, there
Okay.
could be a situation where we're like, hey, it needs to be 2 days before now. But more often than not, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions. I'll double check the Q&A. Nothing there. So I guess we just explained everything so well.
Hmm.
Nobody has any questions. I really appreciate your help. It's Jake, not Jacob, right?
Either or, call
Right.
me whatever.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. And I hope that people will call you to take payroll off their plate. And we will have our contact information. We'll be emailing out the slides as well as a recording of this webinar. So thank you very much. And that will wrap us up.
Thank you.
I will stop the recording. Actually, I'm just going to exit. You have a good night.
You too. Take care.
Bye.